Jack had been working on the alien mining station for 6 months. Humans were rare here, and most aliens treated him with cold politeness. They didn't hate him, but they didn't trust him either. He spent most of his days fixing machinery, eating alone and sleeping in his small quarters. Life was quiet, maybe too quiet. Lyra was different. She was an alien girl with silver blue skin and bright violet eyes. She worked at the hydroponics bay, tending to plants that glowed softly under artificial light. Jack had seen her many times, but they never spoke for more than a few words. She always looked nervous around him, glancing away quickly. Still, there was something in her eyes, a mix of curiosity and shyness that made him want to know her. One evening, the station's alarms went off. The lights flickered, then the entire place went dark. A deep hum from the engines faded, replaced by an unsettling silence. Jack knew this wasn't normal. In the darkness, people shouted in alien languages, some panicking. Jack grabbed his small flashlight and began making his way to the maintenance panel. That was when he saw Lyra. She was standing frozen in the corridor. Clutching a crate of seedlings, the light from his flashlight caught her face. She looked frightened. "Come on this way," Jack said gently. She hesitated for a moment, then stepped toward him, her delicate hands gripping the crate tightly. They walked quickly through the dark hallways. Jack could feel her staying close behind him. Almost too close. A sudden metallic crash echoed nearby, and Lyra gasped without thinking. She reached out and grabbed his arm. Her touch was warm. Trembling, "Don't worry," Jack said softly. "It's probably just a loose container." They reached the emergency hatch, but before Jack could open it, another sound made them both freeze. Heavy footsteps, slow, deliberate, approaching. Through the darkness, Lyra pressed herself against the wall, eyes wide. Jack instinctively stepped in front of her, shielding her from view. The footsteps stopped, then faded away. Lyra's breathing was fast, her chest rising and falling. Jack turned to tell her it was safe, but the words died in his throat. Her eyes were locked on his, shimmering in the faint light. And before he could understand what was happening, she leaned forward and kissed him. It was quick, almost desperate. Her lips were soft, warm. And for a heartbeat, the world seemed to vanish. No darkness, no alarms, just the two of them. Jack didn't move at first, too shocked to react. When she pulled away, her cheeks had turned a deep shade of violet. She looked away quickly, as if she had done something terrible. "Lyra?" Jack started, but she stepped back. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I don't know why." Before he could say anything else, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the corridor. Jack stood there, his heart pounding. The power flickered back on, the lights humming to life. People returned to their work, the chaos fading, but Jack's mind was still trapped in that moment. He didn't know why she had done it, or what it meant. In her culture, he only knew that the kiss felt different, dangerous, important. Later that night, Jack tried to sleep. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face. He didn't understand what he had just been part of, and deep down, he felt that this wasn't the end. Something had started with that kiss, something that neither of them could take back. The next morning, Jack went to the hydroponics bay. He told himself it was to check the water pumps, but he knew that wasn't the real reason. He wanted to see Lyra, to understand why she had kissed him, but when he entered, her workstation was empty. The rows of glowing plants were still there, but her tools were neatly packed away. A tall alien supervisor stood nearby. Jack walked over, pretending to look at the control panel. "Where's Lyra?" he asked casually. The supervisor's expression was unreadable. "She was taken home," the alien said simply, turning away. Jack frowned. "Taken? Why?" The supervisor glanced at him, almost with pity. "Her family requested her return. That is all." It didn't feel like that is all to Jack. He pressed for more information, but the supervisor refused to speak further. By midday, the news had spread quietly among the station workers. Whispers and alien tongues followed Jack down the corridors. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with open disapproval. He knew they were talking about the kiss. Jack spent the next 2 days trying to send messages to Lyra's homeworld. Each time, the station's communication system blocked him with a private channel notice. It was clear her family didn't want him contacting her. The thought made his chest feel heavy. He didn't know if she had been forced to leave or if she had chosen to go. Either way, she was gone. And the station felt emptier without her. Weeks passed. Jack tried to focus on his work, repairing engines, fixing power conduits. But every now and then, something would remind him of her. The faint scent of the hydroponics bay, the sound of her soft voice, the memory of her violet eyes staring into his during the blackout. Then, one evening, as he sat alone in the cafeteria, he overheard 2 alien dock workers talking. "She is pregnant," one whispered in their native tongue. Jack didn't understand much of their language, but that word pregnant was clear enough. His fork froze halfway to his mouth. The workers noticed his look and quickly left. Avoiding his gaze, Jack's thoughts spun. It couldn't be. They had only kissed. But what if, in her species, a kiss meant something far more biological? He remembered how quickly she had run away, the shame in her voice, and the way the supervisor had said her family requested her return. Pieces began to fit together, and the picture they formed made his pulse race. The next day, Jack went to the station's records office. He tried to find any travel logs showing where her ship had gone. The clerk refused to share the data, saying it was protected. Jack left frustrated, but his suspicion only grew stronger. If she truly was pregnant, and if the child was part human, then her family might see it as a disgrace, or worse, a threat. Months passed. The seasons on the station changed. Shipments came and went. Jack kept working, kept waiting, but deep down, he began to accept the truth. Lyra might never come back. Some nights, he would stand at the observation deck, staring out at the endless stars. He would wonder which one was her home. And if she ever thought about him, it hurt to imagine her raising a child alone. Far away, it hurt even more to think that maybe she wasn't allowed to raise it at all. By the end of the year, the memory of the kiss still burned in him, but it was joined by something else now. A quiet anger. If she was out there, struggling or afraid, he couldn't do anything to help. That helplessness was worse than the loneliness. Still, a small part of him refused to let go, because somewhere deep inside, Jack felt it. This was not the end of their story. It had been almost a full year since Lyra vanished from the station. Jack had learned to live with the silence, though it never truly left him. The station's days blurred together, fixing machinery, eating alone, staring at the stars at night. But sometimes, in the quiet, he would still feel the ghost of her touch, the warmth of that kiss. On a normal afternoon, Jack was repairing a coolant pipe in the docking bay. Cargo ships came and went, crews unloading crates and shouting in different alien tongues. He was halfway through tightening a valve when the loudspeakers announced, "Incoming diplomatic shuttle priority clearance." The dock workers stopped for a moment, watching the large doors slowly open. A sleek silver shuttle drifted inside, its hull reflecting the station's lights. It didn't look like any mining vessel. This was the kind used for high-ranking officials. Jack wiped the sweat from his flay, wiped the sweat from his brow and stood up, curious. The shuttle's ramp lowered with a soft hiss. Several alien guards stepped out, scanning the area with cold eyes. And then, she appeared. Lyra. She looked different, older, stronger, her posture more confident. Her silver blue skin seemed even more radiant under the docking bay lights. Her hair was tied back, but her violet eyes still shone with the same depth he remembered. In her arms, she carried something wrapped in a pale cloth. Holding it close to her chest, Jack's breath caught for a moment. The noise of the docking bay faded. It was just her and him across the open space. She noticed him instantly. Her eyes widened and she stopped walking. The guards glanced at her, confused. She whispered something to them, then slowly began moving toward Jack. Jack's heart pounded as she came closer. When she stood just a few feet away, she looked down. At the bundle in her arms, her lips trembled as she spoke softly. "This is yours." The cloth shifted, and Jack saw a tiny face, a baby. Its skin a soft mix of pale human tones and faint blue shimmer. Its eyes, still adjusting to the light, reflected a strange shade. Between green and violet, Jack's legs felt unsteady. He didn't know whether to reach out or step back. I don't understand," Jack whispered. Lyra's gaze softened, but there was sadness in it too. "In my world, the kiss we shared. It was not just a kiss," she said. "In my people, it is. A bond, a sharing of life." Her voice wavered. "When it happens between two of my kind, it is celebrated, but with another species, it is forbidden." Jack looked at the baby again. It was so small, so fragile. Yet it felt like it held the weight of two worlds, your family. Jack began, but she shook her head. "They cast me out. I had to survive alone until he was born." Her arms tightened protectively around the child. "They would have taken him from me, studied him, or worse." Jack's jaw clenched. The thought of anyone harming the baby sent a rush of anger through him. The little one stirred, letting out a small sound. Jack's heart melted. He reached out slowly, his hand brushing the soft cloth. The baby's tiny fingers curled around his thumb. Something inside Jack shifted. This wasn't just Lyra's child anymore. It was theirs. "What now?" Jack asked quietly. Lyra looked around, lowering her voice. "I shouldn't be here long. The council will come for us if they find out where we are." Her words were urgent, but her eyes held a plea. She was asking him for more than help. She was asking for a place in his life again. Jack nodded without hesitation. "Then we'll make sure they don't find you," he said firmly. For the first time since that night of the kiss, Lyra smiled. It was small, almost fragile, but it carried the warmth of hope. The docking bay workers had stopped pretending they weren't watching. Whispers spread quickly. Some looked curious, others hostile. Jack didn't care. He knew this was the beginning of something dangerous, but also the beginning of something worth fighting for. Jack led Lyra and the baby away from the crowded docking bay. He didn't want curious eyes or whispering mouths following them. They moved through narrow maintenance corridors until they reached his small quarters. Inside, the dim yellow light made the space feel even smaller. Lyra sat carefully on the edge of his bunk. Cradling the baby close, Jack stood by the door for a moment, still trying to process what was happening. The sight of her here, after a year, holding a child that was part him, didn't feel real, but the look in her eyes told him it was all too real. He sat down across from her. Leaning forward, "Tell me everything," he said quietly. Lyra hesitated, her gaze shifting to the baby. "When I left the station, my family already suspected," she began. "They took me back to my homeworld. Our healers confirmed it. I was carrying a hybrid child." Her voice was soft but steady. "In my people's history, such a thing has never happened naturally. It is impossible," they said. Jack frowned. "Impossible? Clearly not." Lyra shook her head. "They believe your kind and mine are too different to create life, but the kiss. In my species, it is not just a gesture. It is an exchange, energy, cells, memory. It is how we choose our life bond partners." Jack sat back, trying to absorb her words. "So when you kissed me," Lyra met his eyes. "You became part of me, and I, part of you." She looked down, brushing the baby's cheek with her thumb. The council called it unnatural, dangerous. They claimed the child might carry traits that could upset the balance. Between our species, her tone hardened. They ordered me to give him up for research to be raised in a lab. I refused. They declared me exiled. Jack's fists clenched. He could imagine what research meant in political language. Endless tests, isolation, maybe even dissection. And you've been on your own all this time? He asked. She nodded. I stayed on distant colonies, kept moving, never in one place for more than a few weeks. It was hard, but... Her voice softened. He made it worth it. The baby stirred, letting out a tiny whimper. Lyra shifted, rocking him gently. Jack couldn't stop watching. There was something about the way the baby looked at him, as if he already knew. The small fingers reached toward Jack. Without thinking, he took the baby in his arms. The warmth, the weight, the tiny heartbeat against his chest, it hit him harder than he expected. This isn't just about us anymore, Lyra said, her voice low but urgent. They will come for him, Jack. The council will send trackers, soldiers, anyone they need. To them, he is not a child. He is a key. If he can survive, if he can grow, he proves something they have denied for centuries. Jack looked at her. What exactly does he prove? Lyra's eyes darkened, that our people are not as separate as we believe, that we are more alike than different. And that frightens those in power. Because if we can share blood, maybe we can share everything. Trade, culture, even unity. Jack understood then the baby wasn't just a child. He was living proof that the barriers between species could be broken, and for leaders who thrived on division and fear. That was dangerous. A sudden knock on the metal door made them both freeze. Jack set the baby back in Lyra's arms and stood. Who is it? He called. A rough voice replied in alien tongue. Lyra's eyes widened. It's them, she whispered. They found us. Jack glanced at the tiny window above his bed. The maintenance ducts ran behind it. He looked back at her. We have to move, now. Lyra clutched the baby tighter. Nodding, Jack pulled open the vent cover. The cold air rushing in, he helped her climb inside first. Then followed. Behind them, the door control began to spark under forced override. As they crawled into the shadows of the station's hidden passages, Jack knew the truth Lyra had shared was just the beginning. The baby was more than family now. He was a target, hope, and a danger all at once. And Jack had no intention of letting anyone take him away. The maintenance ducts were narrow and cold. Metal creaked beneath their weight as Jack crawled ahead, guiding Lyra and the baby through the shadows. Every few meters he would stop, listening for sounds of pursuit. Voices echoed faintly below. Sharp, clipped commands in an alien tongue. They were searching. And they were close. Lyra moved slowly, careful not to let the baby cry. Jack could hear her breathing, quick but controlled. The ducts twisted like a maze, but Jack knew this station better than most. Years of repair work had taught him every shortcut and hidden access route if they moved fast. They could reach the old cargo bay, a place long abandoned and rarely checked. A muffled clang from behind made Jack freeze. Through the thin metal, he felt the vibrations of heavy boots. They're right under us, he whispered. Lyra's grip on the baby tightened. Jack motioned for silence, waiting until the sounds faded. Then they moved again, faster this time. When they finally emerged from the duct, the air in the cargo bay was stale. Dim lights spilled through dusty skylights. Old crates and broken machinery lay scattered, forgotten. Jack pulled a tarp from one of the crates and spread it in the corner. You can rest here for now. Ah, he said. Lyra sat, holding the baby close. Her eyes scanning the shadows, she didn't look convinced that they were safe. Jack went to an old terminal in the corner. The screen flickered weakly, but it still had power. He began locking down nearby access doors. It wouldn't stop the soldiers forever, but it would buy them time. Lyra watched him, her voice low. They won't stop, Jack. They'll keep searching until they find him. Jack turned to her. Then, we make it harder. I'm not letting them take him, Lyra. She studied him for a long moment, then gave a small nod. I believe you. But we can't do this alone. Jack thought for a moment. There was one person who might help an old alien engineer named Varric. Varric owed Jack a favor from years ago, and more importantly, he hated the Council's politics. If anyone could help them hide, it was him. Jack slipped out of the cargo bay and moved quickly through the lower maintenance halls. He kept his head down, avoiding patrols. When he reached Varric's workshop, the old alien was hunched over a broken engine. Varric looked up, his dark eyes narrowing. You've brought trouble, haven't you? Jack didn't waste time. He explained everything Lyra's return. The baby, the council soldiers, Varric listened quietly, then let out a slow breath. A child like that. They will never stop hunting him. Jack leaned forward. Can you help us? Varric's lips curved into a grim smile. I can hide you, but it won't be for free. Not in credits, but in risk. If they catch me, I'm as good as dead. Then we make sure they don't, Jack said firmly. Varric thought for a moment, then nodded. There's a freight transport leaving in 2 days, headed for an unlisted mining colony. If you can get on that ship without being seen, you might have a chance. Jack returned to the cargo bay with the plan. Lyra listened, her eyes filled with both hope and fear. 2 days is a long time to stay hidden, she said quietly. Jack nodded. I'll make sure we're ready. That night, the bay was quiet. Lyra sat with the baby sleeping in her arms. Jack kept watch by the door, listening for any sound, but even in the silence, he could feel the tension building somewhere in the station. Soldiers were searching, and each hour that passed brought them closer. Near midnight, Jack heard a faint metallic scrape outside the bay. He motioned for Lyra to stay quiet. Moving silently, he approached the door. Through the gap, he saw a shadow shift, then a glint of metal. A weapon. They had found them. Jack's mind raced. They couldn't leave now. The corridors were swarming. He turned back to Lyra, his voice steady but urgent. Hide in the crates. Don't move until I come back. She hesitated, then obeyed, tucking herself and the baby deep into the shadows. Jack grabbed a metal rod from the floor and positioned himself by the entrance. The first soldier forced the door open, stepping inside cautiously. Jack swung hard, the rod smashing into the soldier's helmet. The alien staggered, and Jack moved in, fighting to keep the others from entering. It was only a matter of time before they overwhelmed him, but Jack knew one thing: he would fight as long as it took. Because the baby wasn't just Lyra's future anymore, he was his too. The moment Jack struck the first soldier, the others outside reacted instantly. Shouts echoed in the corridor. Boots pounding against the metal floor, Jack backed away from the entrance, his chest heaving. He knew they couldn't win in a straight fight. Not here, not now. Lyra. He called in a low, urgent voice. She emerged from between the crates. Clutching the baby tightly, her eyes darted to the door where shadows shifted. They'll break through, she whispered. Jack nodded, his mind racing. We have to move. Now, he grabbed a small access panel on the far wall and yanked it open. Behind it, a narrow maintenance shaft led deeper into the station's underbelly. Go, he urged. Lyra climbed in first. Moving quickly, despite the baby in her arms, Jack followed, sealing the panel behind them just as the cargo bay door gave way. The shaft was dark and smelled of oil. Every sound felt too loud. The creak of metal, the soft cry of the baby. From somewhere far above, muffled voices shouted orders. They'll search the whole sector, Lyra said breathlessly. Jack crawled faster. Not if we're gone before they sweep it, They emerged into a lower level utility corridor. Jack led the way, taking turns only he knew. Every corner they turned felt like a gamble. If they met a patrol here, they'd have nowhere to run. Finally, they reached Varric's workshop. The old alien was waiting. The lights dimmed. "You're early," he said. "They found us," Jack replied. Varric's jaw tightened. "Then we move ahead of schedule." He guided them to the back of the workshop where a massive cargo container sat on a hover platform. "This is going on to a supply ship headed for the Outer Rim. Once it's loaded, you'll be inside," Varric explained. "It's unregistered cargo. No one will check it if we time it right." Lyra hesitated, looking at Jack. "Are you sure about this? Once we leave, there's no coming back." Jack didn't hesitate. "I'm sure." They climbed inside the container. It smelled faintly of machine parts and dust. Varric handed Jack a small data pad. "It has the route to a safe place on the mining colony. People there don't ask questions." Then he sealed the container, plunging them into darkness. The weight was agonizing. Every bump and jolt of the hover platform felt like a warning. They could hear distant voices, the clang of docking clamps, then silence, followed by the deep rumble of engines starting. For a moment, Jack allowed himself to breathe. They were leaving, but the relief didn't last long. A sudden metallic thud rattled the container, then another. "They're scanning the cargo," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. Jack clenched his jaw. If the scan detected their heat signatures, they'd be caught before they even left the station. He shifted, pressing himself and Lyra against the cold metal wall to blend with the container's temperature. The baby stirred, letting out a soft cry. Lyra rocked him gently, praying it would be enough. The scanning noise passed. Seconds dragged into minutes. Then the low vibration of liftoff began. Jack closed his eyes. They'd made it past the first hurdle. Hours later, the container shuddered as the ship entered faster than light travel. Jack knew they were safe for now, but when they reached the mining colony, their problems wouldn't just vanish, they'd still be hunted. And now, they'd be on a remote world with fewer places to hide. Lyra leaned against him, exhaustion in her eyes. "You risked everything for us," she said softly. Jack looked at her and then at the baby sleeping in her arms. "You're not just us anymore," he replied. "You're my family now." She didn't answer right away, but the way she leaned her head against his shoulder said more than words could. Outside the container walls, stars stretched endlessly in every direction. They were leaving behind the station, the council's reach, and everything familiar. But somewhere ahead, there was a chance for the baby to grow without fear, and Jack would make sure nothing took that away. The cargo container jolted as the ship began its descent. Jack and Lyra held on to the walls, the baby sleeping between them, through the thin metal. They could hear the hiss of the atmosphere rushing past. The ride was rough, but to Jack, every shake meant they were closer to safety after what felt like hours. The container came to a stop. Varric's plan had worked. No inspection, no questions. The sounds of docking faded, replaced by the distant hum of machinery and muffled voices. Jack pressed his ear to the wall, waiting until the footsteps moved away. Then he pushed open the release latch from inside. Cool, dry air filled the container. The light was dim, but warmer than the station's harsh glow. They were in a massive storage bay filled with mining equipment and stacked ore crates. The air carried the scent of metal, dust, and rock, the smell of a working colony. Lyra stepped out first, cradling the baby close. Her eyes scanned the room nervously. "This place feels quiet," she murmured. Jack nodded. "Quiet is good. Quiet means we can disappear." They slipped out of the storage bay, following a narrow side passage. Varric's datapad showed them the way to an old miner's cabin at the far edge of the colony. The walk took nearly an hour, weaving through dusty streets and abandoned tunnels. The people they passed didn't look twice at them, exactly as Varric had promised. The cabin was small, built from worn metal sheets and local stone. Inside, there was a single bed, a table, and a small heater in the corner. It wasn't much. But after everything they'd been through, it felt like home. Jack set down the few supplies they had. Then turned to Lyra. "We'll make it work," he said, for the first time since arriving. She smiled. It wasn't the guarded smile she wore on the station. This one was soft. "Real. I believe you," she said. That night, the baby woke. Only once, Jack took him gently from Lyra's arms and rocked him near the heater. The tiny eyes blinked up at him, curious and calm. Jack felt something settle in his chest, a promise he hadn't spoken aloud, but knew he would keep. No one would take this child from them the next morning. Jack began making repairs to the cabin. He patched holes in the roof, fixed the door hinges, even set up a small water filter. Lyra tended to a corner of the room, turning it into a space for the baby. Bit by bit, the cold, empty cabin started to feel alive. Days passed without any sign of pursuit. The mining colony's people kept to themselves. They had their own struggles and didn't care much for outsider secrets. Still, Jack never let his guard down. At night, he'd sit outside, watching the stars, listening for the faint hum of engines. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped behind the jagged cliffs, a shadow moved in the distance. Jack tensed, his hand tightening around the wrench he carried. A figure emerged from the haze, a local miner, pushing a small cart. He stopped a few meters away. Studying Jack silently. "You're the new one," the miner said at last. Jack nodded slowly. "Just here to work." The miner's eyes shifted to the cabin. He gave a short nod. "Then work hard. Keep your head down, and no one will bother you." Without another word, he pushed his cart away, disappearing into the fading light. That night, Lyra stood beside Jack outside the cabin. The baby slept peacefully inside. "Do you think they'll find us?" she asked. Jack's eyes stayed on the stars. "They might try, but they'll have to go through me first." Lyra's hand brushed his. He took it. Holding it firmly. "You changed everything," she said softly. "One kiss, and now." She glanced toward the cabin. "Now we have a family." Jack looked at her, and then at the quiet horizon. It wasn't the end of their struggles, he knew that, but it was a beginning. And for the first time in a long while, the future didn't feel like something to fear. It felt like something to protect. Inside the cabin, the heater hummed, casting a warm glow over the small room. The baby shifted in his sleep, unaware of the world beyond. Jack and Lyra stepped inside, closing the door behind them, and in that small, humble space, they began the life they had fought so hard to reach.